a couple of years ago in Panchgani, organized by Professor Raj Mohan Gandhi, I was challenged by an angry young man. Keep your Hinduism in your house. Why do you need to bring it into the streets? The young man could have been a conservative Hindu offended by my articulation of a progressive Hindu identity, which opposes both caste and Hindutva, or he could have been a secular Indian who felt that my identifying publicly as Hindu was an assertion of caste and majoritarian privilege. I and my colleagues have experienced both types of pushback simply for identifying as Hindu. My response was something like, I am a practicing Hindu. I love Sita and Rama, but Jai Shri Ram has become a murder chant. I would much rather keep my faith in my house and in my heart, but because others have brought this aberration of my faith to the streets, I have no choice but to meet them there. The only alternative would be to renounce my Hindu identity, and then the murderers will have won. In an interfaith gathering in Madurai, this time organized by the late Swami Agnivesh, the participants were arguing at length about whether Hinduism really exists and whether it's a religion. And in my frustration, I said, while we argue here about whether Hinduism exists or not, the country we love is being turned into a Hindu Rashtra. I speak in this academic conference with humility because I'm not an academic, but also with urgency, bringing an activist perspective from the field. And also I acknowledge that I have all the privileges of being an upper caste born Hindu. My organization, Sadhana and Hindus for Human Rights, are committed to working with universities, professors, and students who are committed to freedom of thought and speech. Indeed, over 400 scholars and academics readily signed a statement of solidarity with us when the Hindu American Foundation recently filed a slap lawsuit against us and our allies to try and silence us for speaking out against Hindutva. In our advocacy, we state clearly that Hindutva ideology is not the same as the Hinduism we aspire to, but we cannot deny that proponents of Hindutva are doing so as Hindus in the name of a monolithic Hinduism. As Shana put it, not all Hinduism is Hindutva, but Hindutva is clearly one manifestation of Hinduism. I agree with this. We are not trying to reclaim some glorious pre-Hindutva version of Hinduism. As previous speakers have pointed out, it is undeniable that Hindutva is influenced by long histories of casteism and patriarchy in Hindu traditions, as well as 20th century European fascism. We are trying, rather, to envision, articulate, and actually create a new vision for Hindu identity, and one that can be lived now. As my guru, Dr. Anantanand Rambachan says, the meaning of being Hindu must not continue to require the demeaning of another human being. We recognize that this is an audacious experiment, especially given Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's powerful critiques of Hinduism, but we believe it is one worth undertaking. And we are determined not to make the same mistakes as the Hindu reformers who invited Dr. Ambedkar to speak at their conference and then retracted the invitation after reading the speech that became Annihilation of Caste. As Dr. Ambedkar himself said in his 1936 speech, Hindus must give a new doctrinal basis to your religion, a basis that will be in consonance with liberty, equality, and fraternity, in short, with democracy. It is tragic that barring a few exceptions, not a single Hindu religious leader or scholar has seriously, deeply engaged with Ambedkar's challenge. But today, in order to defeat Hindutva, we must also take up Ambedkar's challenge. We cannot prioritize defeating Hindutva over annihilating caste. We must do both. I have been asked by anti-caste activists how a religion that creates and perpetuates caste can be a foundation for justice. I'm deeply troubled by caste and also the gender injustice in my religion and my community. But I've also, to be honest, been empowered and liberated by a religious tradition which has taught me that we are all one, that God is in every one of us and in every part of the universe. And most importantly for me, that we must each do our dharma with all our heart without paying mind to success and failure. The Rig Veda tells us to let noble thoughts come from all directions. In other words, we should remain open to views and beliefs different to our own. These simple tenets have served me throughout my life. Brahmachari Ji Sharan, the Hindu chaplain of Georgetown University, once defined his own Hinduism thus: question everyone, question everything, and follow no one and nothing blindly. As Ambedkar himself hinted in a sentence of Annihilation of Caste and in a chapter of Riddles in Hinduism, Hindu traditions most certainly have the resources to be a solid foundation for justice. We now have two US-based progressive and anti-caste Hindu organizations, Sadhana and Hindus for Human Rights. Sadhana has a network of progressive priests who perform weddings, pujas, and rituals where caste is not mentioned, where there is gender equality and the honoring of the earth. In our satsang with Desi Rainbow Parents and Allies, an organization for parents and families of LGBTQ+ children, the queer and trans community members present said that this was the first time they had felt whole in a Hindu space. Regarding Hindus for Human Rights, who I'm representing here today, Hindus for Human Rights adds an anti-caste, anti-Hindutva Hindu voice to all the urgent advocacy for human rights and religious freedom in India, and also in the Indian diaspora. Our religious identity has given us legitimacy to be part of interfaith forums and faith-based advocacy platforms that until now have been monopolized by Hindutva-aligned organizations. Both organizations are the only Hindu organizations who participated in interfaith protests at the US-Mexico border during Trump's presidency, or are members of Reverend William Barber's Poor People's Campaign. Both organizations are committed to being allies to Dalit rights organizations and struggles. Whether it is the Cisco case, where a Dalit employee and the state of California have sued the company for caste-based discrimination, or the Baps Mandir in New Jersey, which reportedly hired 200 Indian laborers, mostly Dalit, confiscated their passports and paid them $1 an hour. We are trying to do all we can to support and amplify the struggle. We step forward and are public when asked, but we more often step back and play a supporting role. When I stood outside a stadium in Houston protesting the Howdy Modi event, I felt honored to stand with my friends in Indian American Muslim Council, but I also felt heartbroken that I didn't meet a single other Hindu in the protest. The streams of Hindus filing into the stadium could have been my own relatives dressed up for a wedding. Those that caught my eye glared at me with nothing short of hatred. But in that moment, as sad as I was, I realized that this was where I needed to be. To call myself a Hindu necessitates that I stand up against all injustice everywhere, particularly injustice perpetrated by Hindus. I see the Gita as a call to action, and this is my action, to stand up as a Hindu against hatred and violence. It is an extraordinary achievement that this conference bravely stayed the course despite the vicious trolling. It has been highly personal for all of us in Hindus for Human Rights who have been fighting this battle within our own community. We understand that the centuries-old atrocity of caste has rendered our religious traditions irredeemable in the eyes of many who have faced the brutal brunt of them. We do not argue with them or try to convince them otherwise, but we are fiercely committed to the work of reforming our traditions and will just keep showing up to do the work and learning from our mistakes and keeping on going. Perhaps we will persuade some Hindus who are influenced by Hindutva to join us on a more compassionate path against caste and Hindutva. And I hope our justice movements will find place for them. Our liberation is bound up with each other. We all rise or fall together. We want to keep working with all of you to continue these critical discussions. And to all the organizers and panelists, congratulations for your courage and tenacity in pulling off such a tour de force. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. again, much to talk about in there, also about being